I'm Jason Freeman. I was born with a gift of a speech impediment, but that's another story. Now I'm a professional speaker who specializes right now in speaking to junior high and high school students. But today is awkwardly awesome podcast, and today my guest is going to talk about a subject I know very little about about ghosts and paranormal experiences, and I'm so excited and and that's the longest end ever. Check out his introduction starting right now.
Today's guest, Christopher Taylor.
Let me introduce you to Christopher Taylor. Chris Taylor, we all call him. Chris is an international award-winning graphic designer, but for his third appearance on Awkwardly Awesome podcast, he won't be talking shop. For the very first time in a public setting, Chris is going to tell ghost stories. Spooky. That is, he's going to share some of his experiences with the paranormal in honor of Halloween. So without further ado and optimal spookiness, let me introduce Chris Taylor. Chris?
Hey, Jason. How's it going?
Hey, good. I know you're trying to look at me, but
Yeah, I mean, I like it when you look in my eyes, when we talk. It's nice to make eye contact.
but we're in different states, Chris. I don't know if it's going to work quite the same way. So have you ever encountered a ghost before, just like on Ghostbusters?
That's exactly like Ghostbusters. Slimer just comes out of nowhere, flies down and slimes you, and you pull your best Peter Venkman to deal with it. No, yeah, I don't know. It's like weird. This is a weird topic for me because I've always managed to talk about it in a group of close friends. People have heard these stories over the years, but I've never talked about it openly in public. Probably for it's a little bit of an odd topic. Even though I have found in my experience, and I found in talking to other people, that a lot of people do experience it. So it's not as rare or uncommon as you think. But I'm also, I've had my experiences. I've done a lot of studying on the topic. I'm writing a book on the topic. Not necessarily an autobiographical deal, but a fictional story. But yeah, it's still like one of those taboo subjects that it's difficult to talk about because you don't want to get labeled as crazy.
So why do you want to give voice to it now?
Well, I think it spans back to, I think it was after we did our first one. We kind of touched on the topic of horror movies and things like that. And I don't remember, but I think it was me that made the promise that I'd come back on here sometime and tell ghost stories. And we're now in October, which happens to be my favorite month of the year with Halloween and whatnot, if you couldn't tell by the elaborate intro. And so I was like, oh, well, if there was a time to do it, it would be on the 13th day of October in the month of Halloween. And let's just have some fun with it and see where it goes.
Sweet.
So to circle back to that first question, yes, I have seen a ghost.
Sweet. So let's dive right in. Do you remember your first experience with a ghost?
Yes, I do. And I'm assuming that this has got to be my first experience. This is the one that stands out in my mind as being the first one. But, growing up, I moved around a lot. I was, as you know, I was born, actually, we were born in possibly the same hospital, but definitely in the same area. In
Kansas City.
Yeah, in Kansas City. So I moved around. I actually lived in Olathe, Kansas, but I was born in Kansas City. It went from Kansas to Michigan to Virginia, and then I spent the majority of my life in California. But since then, it's been bouncing around a lot. It's been, from the Southern California, Northern California, Southern California again, blah blah blah. So the first time I recall ever seeing a ghost happened when I lived in Virginia. So based on my moving history, that would have been sometime around the age of probably 7 or 8. And it's really cool when I was in Virginia because we got to see a lot of places and go to a lot of places. And we weren't the type of people that just stayed in our houses on the weekend. We went into DC a lot. We went to the Civil War battlegrounds. We went to all these awesome destinations. And there was one place that I always loved, and I couldn't really put my finger on why, but I loved it. And it was called Harpers Ferry. And to give you a little bit of history, Harpers Ferry is where Maryland, West Virginia, and Virginia all meet. And also right where the Potomac River and the other river, the Shenandoah, I believe, river, they connect. And basically, during the Civil War, it was considered to be the most strategic point, and it was such a popular thing. It changed hands between the armies 8 different times, right?
Eight different times.
Yeah,
wow.
8 different times. And there was all sorts of other history and stuff. There were fires, there were takeovers, there was big standoffs. So this little town of, I believe at the time, about 3,000 people. You like small towns. This town today, I think, boasts between 200 and 300 people.
So it's gotten smaller over the years.
It's gotten smaller over the years, and it's become more and more historical. I also think floodings took some things out. So it's got quite a history. And it's often cited as the place where the end of slavery began, which is interesting. So it has a lot of that. Anyways, to go back, because I'm getting off topic here, the very first time I recall ever seeing anything was I was touring one of these houses in Harpers Ferry, and the guide was dressed up in period garb, and there were a lot of people in the town that kind of still reenacted that sort of thing. And we're on the top floor, and our guide is talking to us about this room. And I see in the room there's a crib in the corner, and there's a rocking chair over here on the side, but it's roped off. But I'm not really thinking anything about it because we're standing on the other side of the rope. We're being given a tour by this lady who's dressed the part. And in the room, I see there's an older woman in the rocking chair, and she's holding a baby, and she's rocking back and forth. And she's dressed the same way, as the guy. And so she's telling us about the room and how, the baby died or whatever the case may be, and that sometimes people hear cries from the baby and whatnot. And I'm just assuming in my 7 or 8-year-old mind, I was like, oh, well, this is just a reenactment of this or whatnot. And so the tour kind of keeps going down the hall, and then I smile back and wave at the woman. She doesn't respond to me or anything, but my mom caught me doing it. I was like, Chris, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I just waving to the woman in the rocking chair over there. And she's like, what woman? And all of a sudden I looked at her all weird. I was like, that woman. And then my mom looked in, saw the rocking chair move, despite the fact that nobody was in it. And it really like freaked her out. And then we hurried down. And then towards the end of the tour, when we came down the stairs and went back downstairs, she wanted me to tell the woman what I saw, or tell the host or the guide, sorry, what I saw. And when I told the guide, she like kind of got chills, and she's like, "Oh my God!" She's like, "You're the first one that's seen that in like a week." So this was like
in a week.
yeah.
Wow.
So this is like pretty common occurrence that something happened, but she thought that she had me. I forget what exactly happened, but we wrote down the experience and kind of left it there at the house. But that was the first.
So if anyone has any questions for Chris as we go, please, I want to also ask questions that you're fascinated about. Anything about ghosts or the paranormal, just ask away, okay? Thanks. How do you remember how you felt once you realized you had seen a ghost? Or actually, two ghosts, right? Because the woman and her baby.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird because she was definitely holding the baby. It wasn't crying or doing anything. So I recognized it as a baby, but I didn't see like really much detail of it or its face. I think the way I felt afterwards is I responded more to my mom's reaction, right, than to the spirit itself. To me, it just seemed like a normal person, and it didn't seem out of the ordinary. It was kind of, if anything, it felt normal. It felt calm. And then it was the excitement that surrounded that made the experience more exciting for me. So I wouldn't say it actually like the effect of it really hit me until after we were kind of telling the host and after we had left the house. And then it was like, I remember kind of walking down the street afterwards, and it was like, oh, this new world of possibility kind of opened up that might be there.
So the experience wasn't spooky to you or scary in the moment. It was calm.
Not to me. It was very calm, and that's been my experience with most of them. Not all of them, most of them. It's been very calming, and to me, the fact that I saw her and that it appeared more normal to me, my brain had more time to adjust to it than say, like, imagine my mom had a very different experience just seeing a rocking chair move on its own. If that was my experience, that would probably freak me out more than seeing someone actually in the chair and moving it, logically.
And you actually got such a nice sense of the person that you wanted to turn around and wave at them. Yeah.
Right, exactly. If anything, I thought they were a little rude for not acknowledging me,
So on one end of the emotional spectrum, you felt calm around ghosts. What range of emotions have you felt around ghosts?
Well, I've actually had the run the gamut. You mean over my history?
Yeah.
I've run the gamut of them where it's weird. Like there's some people I know that are kind of afraid of it. Well, before I get ahead of myself. So yeah, I mean, I would say the overall sensation is normally calming. You get the little adrenaline rush, you get the heart beating fast, but then all of a sudden, when it happens in the middle of it, a lot of times it's very serene. It's very calming, and not just calming on like on a physical level, but on an emotional level. There's almost this this release to anxiety, if you will, almost like this understanding internally, like this is normal, this is familiar. There's more to life than just this. I see Heather on there. Heather's heard some of these.
Oh, sweet. Hey, Heather.
But yeah, I have had some experiences that really freaked me out and I didn't like. We love you too. So yeah, I used to. I was Heather's roommate for a little while. We had some cool experiences in the house there that we shared.
Well, so since it's a Halloween special, what's been your scariest experience with the ghost, or how the
Yes, Heather, we're talking ghosties. So, well, the spookiest one, I'll leave that one off. It's a little too bonkers to dive into. But I will kind of go into one that ran the gamut. And what always interests me when these things happen is if it happens to me, I always tell people, like, I'm probably the biggest skeptic you'll meet because I'm always trying to explain it away. Yes, I've experienced these things, but I'm still going to break it down. I'm still going to throw every bit of logic at it that I can. And it's only if that logic fails that then I'm going to say, okay, well, maybe it's something. But again, if it's only me experiencing this, I don't know. Like, maybe it's my imagination on some level. The brain's capable of some pretty crazy stuff. Maybe there could be any number of explanations in my mind if it's just me. So what interests me more is when you have a shared experience, right? When it's a group experience, when more than one person can kind of qualify what you've experienced, and you can go like, oh, so this thing really was the case. And so if I'm looking at group and shared experiences that are safe to share in a public setting, I'd have to go back to my house in Irvine, which was very haunted for some reason. And I say for some reason because it was a brand new house. We moved into it right after it had been built, so it doesn't fit the normal parameters of what qualifies as a haunted house or something.
It definitely wasn't an old creaky house.
No, it was a really nice brand new house in Irvine. Yeah, but it was shortly after we moved in, we started having, just interesting experiences. And one that I remember having a lot is, it was funny, in the backyard, we had this hot tub. And so at night, a lot of times my brother and I would go out in the hot tub, or we'd have friends over and we'd go in the hot tub. And almost every time we were in the hot tub, I'd look up at some point in time and I'd see the blinds in the bonus room that overlooked the hot tub open up, just like that. And sometimes I'd see two, like, yeah, but always at least one. And I'm like, oh, mom and dad just checking on us before they go to bed. So I'd like wave and then get back to doing whatever we were doing. And then I do remember there was one time we were out there and we had some friends over. We're all in the hot tub. And this time, the reason I had so many friends over was my parents were out of town. So I wasn't the type of kid to throw major parties, but I did have friends over to the house when they were gone sometimes. And we're all out in the backyard or in the hot tub. And I look up and then the blind opens, almost not thinking. I'm like just acknowledging and waving, but then I'm like, wait a minute. So I look around the backyard and everybody's there. There's nobody in the house. And that shot a chill. And I asked other people in the hot tub if they had seen it. And only one other person, I think my friend Charlie, was like, oh yeah, the blinds went up. So that kind of made me reevaluate anything. interesting side note to this story. A couple of years ago, I was talking to my mom. Actually, it might have just been last year. And I was like, well, you remember how I was telling her the story of that time they were gone. I said, you remember how you or Dad, I don't know who it was, but you guys would always check on us and flip the blinds open in the bonus room to check on us in the hot tub before you went to bed or whatever. And she's like, I never checked on you guys.
Wow.
Like, oh, so every time that happened, it was potentially something peeking on us. And I do know that there was something special about it. Was throughout the house, but there was something special about that bonus room area. Because there was another time.
And what was the bonus room?
So the bonus room was basically this big room that was in between my brother's room and my room, right? It was kind of on its own wing of the house, if you will. This house was freaking huge. It was the biggest house I had lived in. And you kind of came up the stairs and you went to the left, and then you entered this big bonus room, and we had our TV and video games and the couch and computer and a desk in there. And then if you were facing into the room, my room was on the right and my brother's room was on the left. So basically, if we had friends over, anyone else, this is where we would congregate. And we spent many, many nights trying to beat the GoldenEye 007, or playing group battles and watching movies and everything up there. But yeah, I do. So we were talking about that shared experience. So that's kind of what I was getting to. One of the first shared experiences I remember having was with my brother in that room. And my brother and I had a lot of shared ones, which was very interesting. But we were watching TV, and as we're watching, he had, I think it was my great uncle, had one of those old timey hotel bells that you had to like depress to get it to ding.
Oh yeah. You mean like a round one that you would?
Yeah, like a service bell.
Yeah.
And anyways, it was sitting over on the desk. We're both watching the movie here, and Jason's on the floor. I'm on the couch, and out of the corner of my eye, I see the top of this thing pressed down. Like I see it move, right? And I just hear this ungodly, unnaturally loud bing. It wasn't just like a ding ding. It was like all the force in the world couldn't get this bell to sound that loudly. So both of us like, what the hell? And my brother said the same thing. He's like, I saw that. I saw it go down. I was like, so did I. Hang on a second. Let's see. So I was like, maybe there was a sonic boom or earthquake. So kind of picking up the desk, trying to shake it, throwing other things that aren't even around it on top of it, trying to reproduce the ring. And we couldn't do it. We couldn't reproduce the sound ourselves, even with things that wouldn't have logically worked, but still we're trying to explain it away. And yeah, Jason and I kind of had to sign that one away to, oh, well, that was a thing. And him and I had another experience one time watching, remember that show, Unsolved Mysteries?
So you were in the same bonus room?
No, so this other time, we were downstairs. My parents were gone. And it's just him and I, and like all the lights are off in the house. We're watching Unsolved Mysteries, and they're talking about sometimes they kind of dove into some of the paranormal, aspects of things. And they're talking about this one, and it's kind of getting freaky and everything else. And we're just sitting there, and all of a sudden there's this giant bang behind us at this peak of the show. And we're all like, holy crap. And so we get up, we're going around trying to figure out what it was. And somehow these cabinets in our kitchen, the underside of them had these plastic covers on them. Totally different sides of the kitchen. And somehow these two plastic covers at the same time had fallen and hit the counter, even though they never fell off before and they never fell off again. And it was just, all right, well, maybe we had the lights on too long. They got heated up too much. Who knows? But the fact that they both fell at the same time, timed up with that show when it did, it was just.
So they were plastic what?
They were plastic covered. Have you ever seen the lights that sit underneath a cabinet,
Yeah.
like the underlights? So they were that, and they were just these plastic covers that like went over the light, kind of
Oh, the
protected you from,
covers.
protected you from the bulb. Sorry, that probably wasn't that clear.
And they fell at the same time.
Yeah, and they fell at the same time, in sync with whatever was scary in the show, and it just it kind of spooked the both of us.
So, did you ever know more about this energy in the house? Like, was it one being or several? Or?
Well, so that's the interesting thing. As time went on, and as we had experiences, and I should say before we get to that, kind of the experience that happened that kind of made me really think that we needed to do some investigating into what it could be was I was sick. I probably had bronchitis or something, but I was homesick, and I should probably mention too that I was a good kid. So at like this point in time, I had not I wasn't the kid that did drugs, and I hadn't started drinking yet or anything. So there weren't those extra things that could help explain some of this stuff, which would make it easier. But anyways, I was at home, and I was going to bed, and I realized I had forgotten to take my antibiotics. So I got up to go downstairs because that's where they were, and they were in the kitchen. And our staircase was one where it went down a small flight, there was a landing, and then a second flight, there was a landing, and then finally like a third flight that took you all the way down. So it's one of those that kind of went around the corners of the house. So I walk up, and I'm at the top of the stairs, and I'm starting to go down, or look down, I guess, to that first landing, and I see there's like smoke or fog in the house or something. What the heck is that? And it's kind of starting to get thicker, and I'm just kind of standing here and kind of that dazed, halfway there, half out of your body, sick feeling that you have.
Yeah.
I'm like, what in the hell is going on? And this thing just kept getting thicker and thicker until like eventually I started to see it forming a head and shoulders. And then like the head started looking like it had pigtails on it. And then I could see very clearly what appeared to be the outline of a little girl. But then it kind of just faded into nothing, and standing there on that first landing. And I don't know what possessed me, but I didn't feel any like fear. I wasn't scared or anything. And there was this almost rebellious nature in me, like, well, I gotta get my medicine. So I just went and walked through her like it was nothing, And as I passed through, it was ice cold, And for whatever reason,
she was still there when you passed through.
So she was still like there as I passed through it, and it was like ice cold where she was standing. And then I got down to the bottom of I went down all the way to the bottom of this floor, and I looked back up, and this thing was still there, but now it had kind of shifted and looked like it was looking in my direction, And that's when I felt those shivers that shoot up my spine and everything. I got scared. So I went in the kitchen, I took my medicine, and then like I stayed down there for a really long time before I was even brave enough to like go back around the corner and see if she was still there. And then when I was convinced she wasn't, I went back into my room, but I shut the door, and I normally slept with the door open, but I shut the door that night, and I just remember sitting on the edge of my bed for a really long time. And it was after that one that my friends and I started trying to kind of look into what could be behind it, because nothing else made sense. It was, like I said, it wasn't an old house. It was a brand new house. So something had to have happened on that land or in that area. And I think we even at one point had typed up some sort of Microsoft publisher deal and put it in the neighbor's mailbox, asking like if anyone has experiences and things like that, call this number or email this address. But us being us, I think we were probably a little lazy too, so it probably only made it into about 10 mailboxes.
Hmm.
But this is before the days. This would have been 90, 97, 98. So we had the internet, but it was dial-up still. Like, it took forever. We didn't really have Google at our fingers. We didn't have the abilities that we do now. I think to do proper research, you had to still go to the library and pull up the microfiche and stuff like that. So we didn't go crazy into it, but we did ask around a lot and investigate a lot. And I think the best thing we could come up with, at least the one that satisfied our curiosity with it, was where we were was along the flight path to the El Toro Marine Base. And at some point in time, when the base was fully operational, there had been a plane that went down somewhere in that area. And I seemed to think at the time that this could just be the way that I connected it in my brain. I had assumed it was carrying, women and children, but that might be only because of my experience of seeing the girl, right? It could have just been a Marine base accident or something like that. So anyways, that's the closest thing that we found an explanation, and we were willing to take it. It helped us move past it and kind of sleep at night. And after that, as far as like anything else, any other things, I know there was also a man. I don't know how I knew it was a man presence, but just based on size and everything else. There's a lot of times when we were downstairs, we'd hear footsteps go across the bonus room. And they were often in pairs. It was often a heavy set of steps and a lighter set of steps. So because of my experience seeing the girl, I think I always assumed it was obviously the little girl and then something else, some other entity or spirit. And then there was one time I came home, it was late at night, and I just heard like a lot of like a talking between a kind of like a man voice and a kid voice, but it sounded like it was coming from like right next to me, right inside the house. And it was muffled. I couldn't make out what anyone was saying, but it was like, and so my thought was, what the heck is my neighbor listening to? I'm outside. So I opened up the backyard. I went in the backyard thinking they were blaring their TV, and I hear nothing coming from outside, but I hear the noise and it's coming from inside my kitchen. So I go back in there. I'm like, oh God.
What would you say to someone who experiences fear around the subject of ghosts?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Fear is a natural emotion. I think it exists to protect you. To me, I get that sense of fear triggered more if I feel like I'm in danger. And in my experience with ghosts and with the paranormal, it's been freaky. But with the exception of maybe one time, I've never felt in danger, So I would be much more like, if I hear something, I would be much more relaxed and calm if I hear something that sounds like someone trying to break into a house or something. It'll activate that fearful emotion, sure. But if I were to actually come across and see it was something unexplainable or paranormal, that would actually calm me down and be like, oh, okay, cool. I'd go back to what I was doing, as opposed to actually having to confront an actual human being who was breaking into my house or something. So as far as the feelings that you have, I say just allow them and let them happen, but don't hurt yourself in the process trying to get away from it or trying to do anything else. It's like you are the only one that can harm yourself, I think, in that situation. Because even the ones that I've experienced that I've seen a little more malicious, they're still, it's nothing that's nothing has happened where I feel like they would actually have the ability to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to watch out and do it for yourself. Or I don't know, that didn't make sense. You have to watch out because not to hurt yourself in the process, I guess. This actually brings up a funny one because we were talking about group experiences. So in that same house, my parents were gone again. They're on vacation somewhere. And it was me and my brother, and I was in a band at the time. So a few of my bandmates were over. Charlie, his girlfriend, my drummer, Sean, I believe my brother's girlfriend was there. In all, I think it was about 10 people in the house.
Nice.
And we were all sitting downstairs and we're all watching a horror movie that I really liked at the time. And it was really freaky. It was called The Entity. And The Entity is essentially about this spirit that harasses this woman. Does more to it, but I don't want to get into the inappropriate aspects of it. But he essentially harasses this woman, and everyone thinks she's crazy, and she seeks help from a parapsychologist that help, whatever. So, anyways, the point is we're watching this movie, and it is at the time I felt it was one of the scariest movies I had seen. And so I wanted to share it with my friends. So we're all sitting down there in the same room where my brother and I had that experience where the covers to the lights had dropped before. And it's this scene of the movie where this entity in the movie starts blowing out all the windows in the house. Like it's pissed off.
Oh my gosh.
It's doing its thing. It's letting its presence be known. It's throwing like characters around the screen and things like that. So it's a very volatile time in the house. And at the same time that this scene kicks in where these windows start blowing out, this is one of those rooms that the ceiling was very tall. Like I think they were 12-foot ceilings or so. And we have these two long windows that are on both sides of the opposite side of the house, but the side of the house where the TV was. And I want to say that those blinds were probably 10 foot. They were 10-foot wooden Venetian blinds that were, oversized and hung all the way down to cover these windows. And both of them, the windows were closed, blinds were down. And when this thing happened, both of these blinds flew up and hit the ceiling with such a force that it just like bang. Yeah, everybody in the room freaked the hell out. I mean,
Wow.
I swear I saw my drummer do a freaking Wile E. Coyote over 3 people seated next to him, the end table, and I think he somehow floated on air getting out the door. He was so freaked out. He just plowed over everyone. Everyone ran out of the house, including me. We were all in the front yard. There were a few of them, like my drummer was one, that just got straight in his car and left without saying anything. They were done. They were not hanging around. To the few of us that did stay around, we were outside for a while talking about like, what the hell was that? So then, even fewer of us who were brave enough to venture back into the house, we now wanted to figure out a logical explanation for what may have happened. So we're going down there, and the first thing I do is check the windows, and they're closed. So no gust of wind, no anything like that to explain it.
A ghost of wind.
A ghost of wind. So the next thing I do is I pick up the bottom of the Venetian blind and I just kind of start like seeing what sort of force would it take to get it to do that.
Kind of like you did with the bell. You tried to.
Exactly. And the amount of force it would take to finally connect, and I didn't even connect that hard because I didn't want to break the things, but the amount of force it would have taken would have been like, as heavy as these things were, as long as they were, it would have taken a good solid throw. And then again, you factor in that just like those light covers, these both did it in unison. And they did it again at a point in the movie that it made sense. It was like the peak of
Mm.
it. So whatever the heck was in that house, it was very playful. It liked having fun. It probably got a kick out of things. And that was, to this day, the biggest group of people that all experienced it. And I think the reason why I like that and I like to cite that experience is just that it's one that I can say, okay, it's not just me. It's not just me. I'm not crazy, you know?
Yeah, your drummer actually ran out of the house and drove home without saying a word.
Yeah. Yeah. And he never came back to my house again.
Mhm. It's all fun and games until the ghosts start throwing blinds around.
Yeah, it's all fun and games until someone sees a ghost.
Mhm. So what would you say to someone who's like, Chris, that sounds cool, but I've never seen ghosts. Is there any way that you can talk about to encourage ghosts to reveal themselves to you?
But I would say, if you want, there's a couple things that I found in my life. I should probably add here that I've never actively. Well, that's not entirely true, but I've never really actively tried to contact them directly or anyway or create something. But what I have found over the years is that one surefire way to get something to happen is, if you are in a spot and you feel like it is, start talking about it. Because there's something about talking about it, especially, again, night should have nothing to do with it, but it somehow does. But if it's nighttime and you're with multiple people, and maybe there's some sort of way in which these people are giving their own psychic energy to their own imaginations to what is being said, that's helping to create it or bring it about. But it could also be whatever is created in that attracts it. But in my experience, yeah, if you're talking about it, it seems to be those times where I talk about it a lot and things like that. Something something weird has been more prone to happen, and that could just be based on my experience. There have been plenty of times where I've gone out looking for it, but kind of not looking, like looking just for a little fun, but nothing. I don't want anything too much to handle. Like I don't want to be inviting these things in and surrounding me. In fact, there was that one time. Remember, I took you to the Whaley House in San Diego, which is one of like the three most popular, the most haunted destinations in California, supposedly, to the point that the U.S. Treasury Department has actually designated them haunted. So I like doing stuff like that, but that's about the end of my stuff. I don't go into graveyards. I don't try and rustle the spirits. I do not touch Ouija boards. I was in a room once and had an experience, but I refused to touch the board, and that experience alone was enough to make me say, no, there's no reason to intentionally try and open this portal. This stuff happens enough to me that I don't need to go chasing it.
So speaking of haunted places, have you heard of a ship called the Queen Mary at all?
Yes, the Queen Mary, one of my favorite ships while it's still floating. They say there's so much damage that they might not be able to repair it. They might have to let it sink.
Oh wow!
They might not be able to keep it afloat. But yeah, so I'm fascinated.
Oh no! Just because of the oil?
Yeah, it's the amount. I forget how many millions of dollars. It's hundreds of millions that it would take to restore it and keep it going.
But is it because of the oil spill or something else?
Oh no, not because of the oil spill. Just from sitting in the salt water for so long, it's just
Oh,
eaten away so much of it. There, at a certain point, you have to weigh, the number of factors, whether or not it's worth it. But that'll be really interesting if they do let it sink to see what happens, because one of the things I've heard thrown out there is that they're exploring the possibility of letting it be like a diving destination.
Mm.
That'd be a whole new level of ghost stories of that. I don't know that I'd want to encounter one underwater. But yeah, so that hotel and I have quite a history. It goes back, and I've had many encounters on there.
So the Queen Mary is, just tell people a little about the Queen Mary if they've never heard of it.
Okay, so the Queen Mary is basically this ship. It's a huge cruise liner. Actually, they say that the Titanic could have fit inside the hull of the Queen Mary. So that gives you an idea.
What? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a good sized ship. Now compared to today's cruise liners, it's nothing. But at the time, it was one of the biggest ships, and it would go across the Atlantic on passenger voyages and whatnot. But where a lot of people think it's more spooky history started to come from was it was used during wartime, and they actually painted it gray because of its size and its speed. And they would go back and forth in the waters with this ship painted gray, and they would actually call it the Gray Ghost because it could go undetected and because of its speed and how fast it went. And during wartime, they never released like the war records, but it's believed that the amount of soldiers who passed away on the boat, because they would go and recover the wounded and everything else, and there were so many people on it, they'd be stacked, and
so it was almost like a hospital, a floating hospital.
Right. So there would be times that it would be a floating hospital, and there'd be times that it would be, any number of things, but just also the sheer back and forth of it. So they don't actually know how many people died on the Queen Mary. But there's been a lot, and not just that, you just take it away. And I find a lot of times with these places that are haunted or anything else, a lot of times it has to do with kind of the psychic residue of emotional things. So if something is very volatile or very emotional, or people are very connected to a place, there almost seems to be this part of them that still exists there that doesn't leave it. And so just with all that, with the sheer amount of everything, I think that all contributes to it. As far as the ghosts that they know they have there, they know they have like one in the swimming pool area. I don't remember the exact story behind that one. But the one that stands out the most is the one that involves the steam room, or not, I'm sorry, the control room at the back of the boat. And apparently soldiers used to play this game where if you sounded an alarm, or if the boat, I don't remember if it was the boat thought it was flooding or what the case may be, but you could run this alarm, and the doors, these big steel doors, will start to close. And eventually it's like, it could have been a fire deal, right? It was trying to close off parts of the ship to fire. I think that was probably what it was. But anyways, these doors would close, and it used to be a game to see how much you could kind of jump back and forth between the door before it totally closed. And it's believed perhaps that one of the sailors, soldiers, or whatever it was playing this game when door number 13 of all doors closed on him and squashed him, killed him to death. Obviously, how do you kill someone?
Yeah. But thanks for being showy. We got it.
Yeah. And so that area, then if you go on the ghost tour on that thing, that's always the one they'll bring up. And I haven't had any direct experience with that other than just feeling the temperature shifts and things like that. But yeah, there's definitely something there. My experience has been more so in the form of seeing orbs with your naked eye, not just on your phone. Everyone likes to say they're dust on the phone, and a lot of times they are. But when you see them with the naked eye, it's a little harder to explain because I don't typically see glowing dust flying around.
And how would you describe an orb?
I mean, it's literally a little ball of light, and you kind of see it move. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast. Queen Mary is the only place I've ever seen one with my naked eye. Other times I see them on the phone all the time, but you know, again,
And is an orb with a naked eye, is that a ghost?
I don't. It's believed that a spirit or a ghost, if you will, it's basically energy, right? I mean, we do know this about ourselves, that if we die, there's some part of us that doesn't die because we know it's energy, right? We're energy-based beings, and you can't kill energy. And so sometimes what I at least think an orb is just this source of energy, whatever it is. It's the life source. It's whatever. It's that piece of it. So I would say, especially on camera and things like that, you're far more prone to pick up orbs or the energy source than you are to see a fully formed, developed person. Like the little girl I saw was very rare. The woman I saw when I was young, that's extremely rare. In fact, that only happened one other time, and it wasn't even that well developed. To see something like that. Most of the time, it's something else. It's something much less. It's flux. So yeah, I've always just thought it to be energy or something like that.
So what have your encounters with ghosts taught you about being human and alive?
Well, on some level, I think the big takeaway, like I said, is there's almost this calming aspect to it that there's something more to this. I don't know what it is. It could be terrible, but I don't get the feeling that it's terrible. And so yeah, I mean there is kind of that. We put a lot of stress, and I used to get a lot of anxiety when I was a kid, thinking about just the idea of death, or the idea of somehow, sometime at some point in time, you'd have to die and you wouldn't be here, and it would like flood my body just with this absolute dread. It went beyond fear. It was just dread, and it felt terrible. And it was, so these experiences and these things that I've had have kind of helped that go away to the point where, yeah, you don't like to think about it, you don't like to entertain it, but it is an unfortunate reality of life. And so somehow having at least some sort of experiential proof that this life might not be it allows you to kind of say, okay, well, I don't know what it is, but I'm okay with it, and I'll just kind of let that be and not burden myself so much with this worry about it, this fear about it.
And having more calm during this life is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to be calm in this world of constant struggle and just everything else. I mean, there's enough that gives us anxiety every single day. Now, I wouldn't say that I'm 100% at peace with the idea. But I don't know. It just kind of give me a little bit. Heather says, I also like the idea that there's more than one answer to what it is. Yeah, I mean, it could be multiple things. Yeah, and I don't know. I don't have to assign that. I've never had that desire to communicate or commune or take this down to such a level where I fully understand it. I kind of just allow that it's happening, or it happened and it exists. But you're asking too another way in which it's done it. It almost adds a richness to life, if you will, right? It's
A
made
richness.
right
How
because
so?
I experienced it so young. It kind of added this fascination to places, right? To the
Mm,
history of places, to what's come
mm,
before, to this realization that a 7-year-old kid is normally pretty entitled and only aware of their own surroundings, their own experience in the world, very subjective. And some people, as we see uh, now, they don't really grow out of that. There's a lot of people that are very subjective, and they're very everything in their life happens to them, or in their little bubble, and they're not really able to reach outside of it. So one thing that these experiences allowed for me was that gave me a fascination with history and with what has happened in this area. Sometimes I'll just sit here and I'll think like, yeah, I'm sitting in my office right now. I'm sitting at my desk, but what has happened on this exact spot? This
mm,
place has been here for
mm.
millions of years. What's happened here before? You know, and I'm a huge I'm a huge fan of history and things like that, and I think a lot of that I owe to these experiences. It just like I said, it adds a richness to everything. It's your experience is very small and very limited in the grand scheme of things. There's so many other things that have happened, and I don't know how many times people consciously take the time to think about that. So it makes me just more aware and conscious of my surroundings.
So there's not only so much happening in different parts of the world that we don't ever experience, but you're saying just right here where we are, right at this moment, so much has happened
Yeah,
before us.
so much has already happened,
Mm,
kind of to bring us to where we are now.
mm,
And
mm,
I think it's just it's kind of cool, and in that same sense where there's that calming and that lack of anxiety, that's the other thing that this has given me the opportunity to do. It's really allowed me to kind of face fears and process fears and also kind of help me see like what's truly important. Right? What's truly important
mm,
in life? Is it so worth it to worry about all these things that you can't control? I don't control whether or not I have these. And by the way, I have them far less now than I used to, when I was younger, to the point where sometimes there'll be such a span where I start to question whether or not I ever saw them. Is it something that has to do with age? Is it something that had to do with whatever? Or have I just gotten to a point in life where I'm more comfortable and I kind of accept that this exists and they're not trying so hard to prove themselves to me? You know, I'll still have the
mm.
occasional one.
Last question I ask everyone. And I've asked you this before, obviously. What does imperfect best have to do with the subject, if anything?
Hmm. Hmm, hmm, hmm. Well, I think one of the key pieces of imperfect best is kind of like what we were just talking about there, which is that whenever you try your best, right, um, there are things that are out of your control that are going to happen.
Mm,
And your main focus with imperfect best is that you continue in spite of them, right?
mm,
So I've never been able to control if I wanted to see a ghost right now, I couldn't make it happen.
mm,
If I
mm,
didn't want to see a ghost right now, I also couldn't make that be an absolute reality. So it's kind of one of those things that then it kind of serves as that reminder. You can't control, you don't know when these things happen, but all of a sudden, when it does, and you find yourself in there, you are in control of your response to it on some
mm,
level, right?
mm,
You might be flooded with emotions, you might be with anything else, just like in the real world. There's things that happen that you're not ready, but you're still in control of how you push forward and how you deal with them. You can go get in the car and drive away like my drummer did, or you can
Nice,
stay
nice.
there and try and do your part to carry on and figure out. I mean, I didn't have the choice of leaving my house. What do we have here? Daryl said that he's seen a ghost and he believes a UFO.
Oh.
My brother and I are pretty convinced we saw a UFO when we lived in Danville, which is up north, just up in the sky. Daryl, can you tell us about your experience real quick?
As Dale was typing, thank you so much, Heather, for your comments. You're a dear friend, and you're actually like I met Heather and you at the same time, pretty much.
Yeah, that's right. If it weren't for Heather is very much responsible for us coming together, in so many ways. And that whole time that was a great time, a great experience of friends and dear friends that we have to this day, and I imagine we'll keep for life, came from that period of time. Here, I'll give you one more to leave it on then. So this one will make your skin crawl a little bit, maybe. So one of the craziest ones in recent memory was I used to have this photo scanner in my room, and I didn't have the biggest desk at the time. Oh God, I don't want to get into that one. Yeah, the spiders. There were some spiders. I had a whole experience when I lived at that house with Heather, and I went down into the kitchen one night, and there were baby spiders everywhere, and I was like, "What the hell?" Like, it just freaked me out, and to the point where I like sprayed down the kitchen. I started cleaning it, and literally felt them crawling on me, and it felt like I was getting bit and all this stuff, and it was just terrible. And I eventually got to the point where I did all I could, and I went up to my room. I took a shower, and I just was like crap and dreading going back down there because I just imagined there'd be this whole takeover. And it was so weird because I texted her. She was out of town. I texted her and called her. I was like, I don't know what to do. I go back down to deal with it. I don't remember if I went down that night or if I waited till morning. It was so overwhelming. I didn't want to deal with it. And I went back down, and there's not a trace. Not a trace of these things. I don't know where they went. I don't know if that's what they do. I don't know if they went into the vents. But it was weird too because I found a couple that like I had killed, but the amount that I had sprayed, there just wasn't evidence of it. So that was very weird.
So before we go, the photo scanner story.
Oh yeah, so the photo scanner. So anyways, I had this thing on my desk when I needed it, but I didn't have the biggest desk. So when it wasn't in use, I kept it up in the closet. This is before the Bluetooth. This is before this very much needed the power cord connected to it. So it lived on the top shelf in my closet, laying in bed one night, sleeping. And this is the same house that I would often be awoken in the middle of the night with the light turning on and the fan going on high. And that one I always said, oh, well, it's like an electrical current, or someone else has got a remote that's triggering this. But this particular night, I woke up to the sound of the scanner going off. And I'm like, what the hell's doing that? And I look over to where it would be on my desk, and it's not there. And then I see, and on the back side of the doors, you got the cracks of the closet. I just see the light going. It's the light of the scanner. And it's just running on its own, no power, not being plugged in, nothing. So that one was experienced as well. So that's one of those things that when they defy expectation or explanation, that's when sometimes you have to give them a little more value, I think.
There's definitely an element of surprise to be woken in the middle of the night to sound of a scanner with no pulse.
Yeah, to say the least. That was a little freaky.
Oh.
But I also remember being so tired, I was just like, oh, screw it.
Well, thanks so much, Chris. Like, you've made the subject at once more peaceful, and it sounds endlessly fascinating. So thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Awkwardness. Station break for awkwardness. Well, yeah. Wasn't that fascinating? Please, if you have any more comments, if you're watching this later, put them in the chat. I'll try to get to them. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks, and until next week, when I have another wonderful guest, have a great week.